What's up, everybody? So, 8th edition did a lot of reworking of 40k gaming, right? It required all of the codices to be redone. It really changed the landscape a bit. And I think overall, it's a fantastic edition, right? I've never really was in an edition I didn't like of 40k, but there's always things you wish were handled a bit differently or done a bit differently or not changed or things that were changed more than they were or whatever. And I have two things that ever since 8th edition came out and was announced and we knew these changes were in effect that I was just not a fan of and still am not, that I want to go over and just give my thoughts on as to why. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. It's really cool to see some of the comments in the Ashram, not some of it, it's cool to see the comments in the Ashram Tarum issue ramble that I did. People sharing their thoughts on the ideas and concepts. Really cool. Feel free to continue your thoughts, no matter how different they are from mine, in the comment section below here as well for this topic. So, in 8th edition, there are two things that I've always wished were handled a bit differently, and they are templates for weapons and armor values for vehicles. Basically, they're gone now. I want them back. And it's not just because they're gone that I want them back. It's definitely because I've used them, right? If I only got into 40k in 8th edition and I didn't know about their existence, I wouldn't be missing them, obviously. And I may not feel like something's odd here and we're missing out on something. Probably not. But at the same token, because yes, I have experienced that and plenty of gamers have, I do feel like the added extra layer of flavor and immersion to the game that is missing now. There's definitely something to be said about optimization, efficiency, and streamlining of a game to make the rules and everything optimized so they're easy to learn, easy to play, but, still have that complexity to them insofar as you don't feel bored playing it once you learn the rules, right? It's easy to play, but fun to try and quote unquote master, or whatever you want to cliche saying you want to use. But my point is, there's definitely value for making rules be easy enough to learn. You don't want to scare people off. You want people who are making that money and time investment to stick around. And there's nothing wrong with a game being easy to learn. I'm always in favor of that. But at the same time, there is something to be said for over optimization or over streamlined and sterilizing, you could say, the immersion. And to a small degree, I feel like certain weapons, and in the case of vehicles, which we'll get to later, we have a bit of sterilization going on in the immersion and flavor factor for these things. Now, these weapons, which were things like flamers, frag missiles, battle cannons, plasma cannons, stuff like that, demolisher cannon, had templates. A flame template for things like flamers, whether it is a gout of promethium, a gout of chemical, a gout of demonic acidic bile, whatever, it represented scouring an area with burning death. And then there was another template, or other templates, small and large blast templates, that represented ordnance style hits or area of effect detonations. And it really helped with the immersion and feel factor for these weapons, because if you have this area of effect ordnance being launched at the enemy, the blast template really helped it feel like, yes, you are blowing up things. It did bog down the game a little bit at times. It made it, there was a bit of a hiccup in it when, in terms of learning it. It took a little bit of extra giddy up, if you will, to learn. I'm using random sayings. But yeah, the learning curve was a little bit steeper because of it, specifically for those type of weapons and dealing with them. But it wasn't anything drastic or terrible or table flipping worthy at all. And once you experienced it a few times, it was old hat. You just went with it. Now, yes, ordnance barrage weapons were always a nuisance to deal with and resolve because of how it was handled, but by and large, blast template weapons, flamer template weapons, they felt nice. They felt special. It was different from just the point and click or point and shoot weapons you had. Last cannons are great, but you just roll the hit, roll the wound, or roll to destroy, whatever, see how it goes. These template weapons, there was a bit of unknown to them. They could deviate. They could scatter to the point of being that shot being a whiff, or they could scatter somewhere that turned out to be extra, a benefit you weren't anticipating, or they could hit right on target and do massive devastation. They had a bit of randomness to them and a bit of a psychological effect to them. Maybe they were a comfort to you because you were dishing out flame templates and blast templates in your army, and you liked it. It felt comfortable for you. Or on the receiving end, you were like, "Oh, great, this is gonna hurt." It just felt right for the weapons. If the flavor text of the weapon is a gout of superheated plasma ball that detonates on impact, blowing up in a massive radius, the template reinforces that. It feels like, yes, it is doing as advertised. If it's a flamer that's meant to just scour cover of enemies by burning everything and anything through that area, the flame template really helped immerse it. And let's be honest, in our mind's eye, no matter how non-nerdy you're trying to be while playing, in the back of our mind, in the mind's eye, we are hearing the sound effects, we are seeing the game unfold as a cinematic before us. It's not just models on a table. And the templates, I felt, helped with that immersion. It helped with that escapism, if you will. And it felt like, yes, I have special weapons for special engagements because here are the templates I need to use them. A little clunky, but once you learn them, it worked out pretty well. The only thing that was always a nuisance to deal with and resolve was Ordnance Barrage. But I feel like if they streamlined the rules for templates and kept the templates around, I really feel like it would be in a good place, honestly. I get why certain changes were done. It kind of just makes everything on the middle ground, so you're not hitting virtually nothing. You're not hitting quote unquote too much. But at the same time, I feel it is a shame. A shame that we lost those templates. I think they added an extra layer to the game, a bit of complexity, which isn't bad, even though it's not that complex to use them. But just add a little extra layer that is good to have. Depending upon how much of a nuisance it is, and I don't think it was much of a nuisance at all. Well, that's just my opinion. You may be thanking the stars that, hey, it's gone. Thank my lucky stars, and that's great. If you feel that way, that's cool. No skin off my nose. Everybody's different. The one thing I definitely wish, if I had to pick just one of the two, it is the armor value on vehicles. Vehicles used to have front, side, and rear armor values, and shooting at them was very different from shooting at an organic target, because they're not organic targets. They are artificial constructs. They are machinery. It doesn't care that you're hitting it with a gun. If the gun can't pierce its armor to do damage to its structure, if you will, or to its components, it shrugs it off. It's like, whatever, no big deal. And, vehicle armor felt like that when it had armor values. Now, there was a time where they were popping like popcorn and balloons. It was just vehicles being destroyed if you looked at them the wrong way. Yeah, it was an issue, but people still ran the vehicles because they still brought benefits. They still were useful to use and tactical to use in a miniature war game scenario. And, when people are referring to back in the day, Land Raiders being just dangerous beasts and things like the Monolith being just this unstoppable war engine for the most part, it was part of it. I feel definitely was because of how vehicles were handled and dealt with, and then their rules on top of that, obviously. But a monstrous creature and a vehicle felt very different from each other because vehicles have vehicle armor. A Dreadnought, for example, and a Wraithlord, while fulfilling similar enough roles, in how they were and what they did, obviously war gear differences, but while they fulfilled a similar kind of role for their armies, they went about it in very different ways. One was a monstrous creature, the Wraithlord, the other was a vehicle, the Dreadnought. And, it was a case of rock, paper, scissors in a way. A vehicle could get just absolutely annihilated by something that was meant to destroy a vehicle. Imagine that. But at the same time, things that could lay low a monstrous creature that's due to the rulings of stuff would not touch a vehicle, potentially, as well. Of course, you had the answer for everything, things like a las cannon. Things that are super high strength, doesn't matter what you are, it's going to hurt you. And that's fine. But vehicles just, again, being literal armor values and little metal walls and metal slabs of armor and everything, really felt like as advertised, because we had this armor value, and over time they refined it. They refined the glancing and penetrating hit tables. They gave them hull points and stuff to have them be a bit more survivable, but still, if you were shooting an anti-tank weapon at them, it had a bit of extra rulings to be better and more effective on the damage tables and the like, because there was added complexity. Sure, you could glance a vehicle, or you could penetrate the vehicle. A glancing hit could do some damage. A glancing hit used to be able to pop a vehicle, and without any thought too. But they really kind of reworked that, and I think we're getting to a nice sweet spot, a nice good place with vehicles personally. And yes, you had to understand how shooting at or punching a tank works versus an organic target. And once you understood the added layer of vehicle combat and or a combat against vehicles, that was it. You understood it. You had the tables, you just did the thing, and then you roll on the table and you just kind of follow the instructions therein. It wasn't that bad. And I feel like we would be in a really good sweet spot with vehicles now if they just kept the armor value and damage tables around, but added a bit more of that survivability, a bit more of that grit and toughness to them in the form of how they kind of did. I think, and I'm not here to propose how, I'm just saying I think they were getting vehicles to a good sweet spot, and if they just stuck around one more edition and refined it, I feel like we would have really been in a good sweet spot with those armor values and the hull points and the damage and all that jazz. It just, again, really, it's that immersion, that flavor level. Are vehicles effective now? Of course they are. People are probably so glad to not have to deal with the possibility of having their tank just annihilated on a damage table roll. I get that. But, can you still drop a tank quickly with dedicated anti-tank shots into it? Of course. I just feel like you could still do that and still have armor values around and still have them feel different. Part of it is just stat line wise. Looking at the stat line, they don't look any different, and therefore that attributes towards feel. But again, it's kind of like the flavor and the immersion of what's advertised. We're talking about, a thick armored hull of a Land Raider, but you don't really see that or visualized anywhere or given to us in any capacity in the Land Raider datasheet. You did in prior editions, you saw the armor values. Like, yes, this thing is a slab-sided armor machine. Same thing with the monolith and so on. Or yes, this battle tank is really hard to kill from the front. And again, the added layer of front, side, and rear values meant people constantly challenging where you were hitting the vehicle from, but it also made things more tactical. How you faced the vehicle, how things went around. I'm not saying you don't still have that. I'm just saying that it felt a bit more obvious and, dare I say, necessary. So with all that said, I do see why the changes were made. Of the two I made mention of, I would love to see armor value come back. Maybe at some time in the future when 9th edition rears its head years down the line, I imagine, maybe we will be graced with the return of templates or the return of an armor value for vehicles, and it'll shake things up and people will get, grumble and everything if they're not used to it, as we do with everything. But I love to see the return of both. If just one armor values, it's at the end of the day, it's not about the effectiveness or the streamlinedness for me. As long as it's not unnecessarily complex or annoying or bogging things down considerably, the extra layer of immersion given by these things is well worth it, in my opinion. But some people will feel, I'm sure many of you probably feel completely different, and that's fine. Share your thoughts on the two things I mentioned, and of course, if you have things that you wish were a bit different, share it in the comment section below as well. I still really enjoy 8th edition. Haven't got to game with it really at all, but I still really enjoy the edition. I like the changes. I think they're going in a good place. If we can just get that armor value in there, get those template weapons back, I think we'll be in a real sweet spot. But again, just my opinion. Anyways, thanks very much for sticking through it and dealing with my rambling and my tangents. And until next time, take it easy.